Love of Swimming is a podcast that celebrates the wonderfully diverse community of swimmers and fantastic swimming opportunities that exist on the Isle of Wight off the south coast of England. Welcome to the podcast. I'm Sandy Cicognani. In 2019, I started the group Outdoor Swimming Isle of Wight as I wanted to find people to swim with in the sea. Since then, I've been on an amazing swimming journey, meeting some wonderful people who share my passion for swimming. I founded a social enterprise to support and encourage people to swim in the sea, trained to be an open water coach, developed the concept of a sea cafe, and have brought the sport of plunging, renamed sea hiking, to the place where I live. I'm part of the outside research study team based at Sussex University, looking at outdoor swimming as a nature-based social prescribing intervention for depression, and I work in the voluntary sector on the Isle of Wight. For the Love of Swimming is also the name of a series of community events that aim to share information and inspiration and to connect people through swimming. So if you're lucky enough to live on or visit the island, look out for these events coming soon. Follow us on all the usual social media channels and don't forget to subscribe to the podcast for more personal swimming stories. This morning I'm with Marion Heming and we're sitting in a lovely sunny sitting room with a cup of coffee. Lovely to meet you, Marion.
Lovely to meet you too, Sandy.
Thank you for coming on this podcast. Perhaps we could begin if you could just introduce yourself, really.
Right. So I'm Marion Heming, married to Richard Heming. And I've reached the great age of 78, which I can't quite believe because, of course, I don't think I'm 78. And we've just lived here now. We've been on the island for 35 years, but because of our health, we had to move, and we moved last June, and we're now in a small bungalow.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Oh, what sort of swimmer would you say you are now? At the moment?
Well, that's a very good question. Now, it amuses me. 10 weeks ago, remembering that I was an ex-swimmer, 10 weeks ago, I was introduced to special care at West Wight swimming pool. Mm-hmm. And there we met Alison. I don't even know her surname.
I think she's Burton.
And she will always remember when I finally got into the water, I just went to her with my hands like a cat going to climb a tree. And I said, "Don't come near me. Don't touch me." So poor Alison said, all right, I'll leave you. Mm-hmm. You just do your own thing. Mm-hmm. Well, I couldn't swim. I didn't know what was going to happen because 2 years ago I was struck with the most aggressive form of osteoporosis and my spine has sort of gone.
Gosh.
And in my spine I have 6 fragility fractures. And when I do something wrong, move slightly incorrectly, I have what I term, I don't know the medical term, as a spasm. And I have to warn everybody, if I do something wrong and I have a spasm, the noise that comes out of my body, my mouth, is so terrifying. Gosh. Because you think I'm being killed.
Gosh.
So I have to warn the lifeguards. Warn anybody, don't worry, it'll be over in a couple of seconds.
Is that a cuckoo clock or is that it's a lovely chime?
No,
that's
fine.
Grandfather
it's
clock. Beautiful, grandfather.
And it's very noisy.
We'll just let it finish.
Anything we're trying to say. So
that's fine. It's beautiful.
We'll just slurp of our coffee.
Yes, we will. Good idea.
Unfortunately,
it's 11 o'clock,
and
everybody.
It always happens. If we're watching something, the critical moment on television.
That's great. Yes, carry on. Where were we?
So, Alison very cleverly, anyway, the noise that comes out is excruciatingly and the pain is ghastly and it's over in a matter of seconds. So I was left to my own devices and did very little except stand in the shallow end and hold on to the rail and just got used to the water touching me. So we wind on by the third or fourth week, I was getting braver. And I then, with every aid around me, like woggles and toggles and you name it, I tried doing breaststroke legs. And I couldn't be out of my depth. I had to be in the shallow. And so by about the 6th week, I was actually doing a sort of breaststroke, arms. Legs weren't really very good. And they all said, Marion, you are swimming. And by the 8th week, I think I swam half a width.
Right.
Vertically. And then on the 10th week, I said to Alison, I haven't tried, my stroke is front crawl. And she said, well, would you like to try? And I said, I know what you're going to say. You're going to say doggy paddle. And she said, yes, but I didn't like to insult you because I know that you're a swimmer and I know that was your stroke. I said, it's all right. I'll try doggy paddle. And then it was like a little miracle. I did about 4 doggy paddles and suddenly I didn't say anything to myself. It was as if somebody had turned a switch on my back. And they all watched and I was absolutely amazed that I went on doggy paddling into front crawl.
Gosh.
And away I went as if I'd never got a problem, never had a problem.
That must have been an amazing
So
feeling.
it was quite a moment. So there we are. I'm back to, not my legs. My legs next week we're going to try a pull buoy between my knees and see what I can do. But it's taken 10 weeks. So anybody who's got dreadful spinal problems, don't give up. Be terrified as I was to begin with and just take it gently.
That is an amazing progression.
You'll get there. But I never thought I would. And it was a very special moment. So, and then Alison, who is obviously has seen this before, knew exactly how to handle somebody who was so terrified. You know, the look on the way I held her hand, I practically stopped the circulation in her hands. I was clutching on as if my life depended on holding her hand.
Wow. Yeah.
So there we go.
That's amazing. Yeah. Well, we'll come back to the special care swimming in a moment if we can. Can we sort of go back? Can you tell us about where and when you first learnt to swim?
I can indeed, because I was in Finland and we were surrounded by water. And so my parents obviously thought that it was a good idea for us to play around in the water and know how to swim.
Do you know how old you were at that time?
I was 4. 4 when I learnt to swim. And 5 when I learnt to dive off a sailing boat. But of course it was a big belly flop, but I was very proud.
I'll bet.
So it went from there really. I've always had to have water around me. So very funny that I should meet Richard, who was also a sailor, and we've always been surrounded by boats and water.
Wonderful.
And I've loved it, and swimming is very much part of my life. So of course it was a huge shock and upset when I was so poorly and of course the pandemic didn't help either, and we fortunately we were never ill with the virus, luckily, but no swimming. So I think I went without swimming for about 3 years.
Right, okay. And prior to that, you'd always swum throughout your life?
Always swum.
Did you have sort of swimming lessons in a pool?
We came to the island in 1988 and I soon joined the pool and met Jenny Ball and started swimming. So that became a regular thing. And then I would go every morning at 7 o'clock or whatever it was.
You're a dedicated swimmer.
Oh, how I either walked, I think at one point we had 3 dogs. Anyway, I did swimming at least once a week, if not twice.
Right.
Kept that up and had a lot of fun doing that, and used to go and have a coffee afterwards. And so, yes, always enjoyed it. And then, of course, there was going to be swimming from West Wight, doing the marathon swim. And of course, I had to go for that, didn't I? And I had to practice. And of course, I had to get the most terrible cramp at the end of it took me an hour to swim from Keyhaven across to Compton Bay.
Okay.
That's where the swim was.
So how far was that swim?
A mile. It's a mile. And I remember thinking, and you had a buddy in a kayak, and I thought, I am not asking him for help. I am going to get ashore. And I couldn't, my legs were so absolutely frozen with cramp. And I just said to him, oh, could you ask for the helpers? Because they were there from the pool, I suppose, welcoming you back. And they came down and sort of arms under my arms, dragged me out of the water and sat me down. And of course, and then unfortunately, I wasn't very good. So hypothermia was setting in.
Gosh.
And that was another story.
Yes.
Anyway.
I was going to say, so are you, what's your sort of typical kit when you swim in the sea?
Just a bathing costume. But I think for that, I did borrow somebody's wetsuit. But no, normally a bathing costume. And nothing fancy at all, just a pair of goggles. Oh, that's what I made them laugh at West Wight with Alison, because I was so thrilled that I could now sort of do a vertical breaststroke that I thought, right, time for goggles and a hat. So the week 9, I appeared in one of the swimmers' hats and goggles, so there was much laughter. But no, there was a good reason. I could get my face in the water.
Yeah,
properly.
Excellent. Yeah, very good. And did you say you had you did some competitive swimming in your day?
How competitive was I? Not very. Anne Collins, who used to take us in those days, and Trevor, her husband, trained the whatever his first name, Mew. Andy Mew, was it? I can't remember. An Olympic swimmer. Anyway, Anne Collins organised competitive swimming galas, and I did a few, but I got disqualified for a bad screw kick or whatever it was called, and I thought, I'm not doing this anymore, I get too nervous. But I then concentrated on Kingfishers, and Kingfishers were lovely. They were disabled, special needs, disabled, what did most of them have?
So Down syndrome.
Down syndrome.
Said, yeah.
And they were a lovely group.
And this was at West Wight.
This was at West Wight. And of course I did lifeguarding as well. I'd forgotten that.
You say, of course, yes. So you trained as a lifeguard?
Trained as a lifeguard. Did that for several years. And enjoyed that. Except that in our day, I'm pretty sure, you had to swim from the shallow end to the deep end, collect your casualty and back again in 45 seconds or something. I've obviously got it wrong because my husband said there's no way you could do that, but it was pretty intensive. So lifeguarding and Kingfishers, and we did that every Thursday with Kingfishers, and they were a lovely group.
And how long did you do that for?
Well, we suddenly realised it was 25 years that I'd been doing it. So I decided that, sadly, the time had come not to do it anymore, but somebody else was going to continue. Yeah. And I'm not sure today whether it's going, because all the youngsters for 25 years, they've all grown up now. They're all doing their own thing. Yes. They're into their 40s, 50s. So I think it just quietly, after a while, I think it went on for a few years, but I don't think it's run at West Wight Swimming Pool anymore. Okay. But it was a very worthwhile, and getting them to do things that they thought they couldn't do.
Yes. Yeah.
No, it was it was a good time. But like people say, all good things come to an end.
Yes.
And time to move on. And as it happened, we all started having aches and pains. So
yes,
Kingfishers ended. And then my swimming completely stopped.
I was going to say, did you have a period where you didn't really swim much?
I think so. I think from whatever that year was, I really can't remember the date that I would go on a Friday morning with my neighbour, and that we continued for quite a while.
Yes.
Probably until my husband had a stroke in 2018, and I should think my Friday morning swimming came to an end roughly in 2018. So the next 2 years it was looking after him.
Yeah.
And then I developed this dreadful problem with my spine.
Yeah. And do you remember what it was that got you to go to special care, the special care swimming session? What triggered that sort of thought, really?
Well, a lovely person that we started having sort of once a month, and her title, she's not a physio, but she came under, I got her name.
Is it an occupational therapist?
Do you know Hannah Cattis?
I don't.
She teaches Pilates and various things, and her name came to me in a letter, and I rang her up. So she came armed with lovely exercises to do in the house, and we did that for quite a while. And then one day she asked a similar sort of question: "What are your aims?" And I looked at her. I said, "Hannah, there's only one thing I really want to do, and that's to be able to swim again." And I was waiting for her to say, "Oh, well, don't be silly, of course you can't." Instead of which she said, "Right, where are we? I think, what about, let's give it 6 months and let's try next summer." And I was sitting there thinking, what? How can I possibly be in 6 months' time able to go in the water even? And absolutely. And it so happened that however I came to hear about special care, and she was delighted to hear that, because we discussed, who could take me swimming? I had no idea that I could do this thing called swimming. It was completely out of reach, I thought. Here, I just totally dismissed it. To cheer myself up, don't think about it, you know you can't.
Right.
But she wasn't having that. So just 10 weeks ago, I started getting in the pool. Yeah. And here we are. So I'm never, will I ever swim a length again? I don't know. I'm not worried about that. It's, can I get in the water? Yes, I can. And I'm not going to drown.
Yes.
So I'm not going in for any gala.
Not yet, no.
But it just proves that what you think you will never, ever do, actually through exercises. And I can't stress enough the help that both Hannah gave me with these exercises. I think that the physios and everybody doing that sort of thing, they, of course, the doctors and consultants and surgeons, of course, they've got their very important role. But actually, when you've finished with them, your life is in the hands of these wonderful people who make you do exercises that you think you can't do. And after a few weeks, again, my husband's very naughty, because when he had his stroke, very much, waste of time. But now he's found that that's not so. And he has joined, and his right leg isn't very good, and he finds after a swimming session that his right leg is a lot better. So everybody, you've got to exercise.
Yes, and I think it is that key of finding a form of exercise that you love, isn't it?
Yes,
or you at least like, if not love. I mean, would you say this podcast is called For the Love of Swimming? Would you say you do love swimming?
Oh, adore it. Absolutely.
And what is it about swimming, you think? Has it always been?
I think when listening to the radio and people who've just done their cold swim, whatever swim, they feel so exhilarated and they feel so good. And it really does. Now, what I have to say, so this really is to prove my love of swimming. We were totally spoiled by one of our sons. Luckily, before a stroke and before all this, in 2016, he sent us on a voyage to Antarctica.
Oh, fantastic.
Now, this was not a cruise ship. This was very much a... we were being lectured. It was... anyway, it was lovely. Very special. A big, big treat. And neither of us were in the state that we're in now. And to my joy, stroke amazement, we were informed that we would be stopping at one point, and that if anybody wanted to go swimming, they could.
Oh, wow.
So, of course, I put my hand up, and we were told to put on our toweling dressing gowns. And I can say that I have plunged, and I've got a certificate to prove it, forgotten where it is now with a move, plunged into Antarctica.
Fantastic.
In minus... have to have a certificate to remind me. But...
very cold.
It was so cold that they had a doctor on board where you entered the water. You had to go right down low, and you had to climb into a rib and then plunge off the rib.
Gosh.
Into the thing. And it was at least -1 anyway, whatever the real temperature was. And it was so cold that when I came out, and I came out with great difficulty.
How long were you in for, do you think?
As long as it takes, probably, I shouldn't think more than 3 minutes. But when I came out, I was holding my head.
Right.
And I was just saying, my head hurts. My head hurts. That's all I can remember. And they threw me a towel to put round my head while I sort of clambered into the rib and then up other steps to get back onto our little ship. And then you were invited to go up onto deck 5 to get in one of those sort of jacuzzi pools. But it was quite an experience, I can tell you, because you were lined up and there were 35 of us waiting to go in. And this sort of doctor standing by, and you're thinking, my gosh. But again, in Finland, where I had grown up as a little girl, the Finns would all have their saunas in the winter and go and jump in the lake through ice. So I was saying to myself, well, I've done something similar. I have swum and had a sauna and been in the snow, so it can't be that bad. But oh boy, it was that bad. It was wicked. But I got a certificate.
You did. I was going to say, and did you regret going in? Because I very rarely regret a swim.
No. It was wonderful. I did it. But I couldn't get... The engines were... although of course you were not at anchor, you were sort of, the ship is no longer moving, but there is, you've got the motion of the engine.
Yes.
And the little rib made it sort of swirly. That's the only way I can describe it.
So like a cold jacuzzi.
Yes.
Ice cold.
And I'm trying to swim back to the steps. And I felt all the time that I was being pushed back. I couldn't quite reach these steps. And I said to them, why didn't you haul me out? And they said, oh, well, you were all right. I said, I couldn't reach the steps.
I was going to say, because that was going to be one of my other questions, is have you had any kind of hairy moments, difficult times
I think
in the
that
water?
was probably my most hairy because it was so cold.
Yeah.
And again, only in a bathing costume. There's no question of
not even neoprene socks or anything like
nothing
that.
like that. No, you just went in. But the head, because I went right under, I wasn't going to keep.
Yes.
I wasn't going to be a teapot, and keep my head out of the water. I had to do it properly.
Yes.
And that was quite a shock to the system. But
I can imagine.
no, I think that was quite an eye-opener to swimming in the cold.
And one more question, if I may. Is there a sort of a favourite place that you've swum, or somewhere that you've always wanted to go, one or the other?
Favourite place? I suppose my memory now goes back to our time in Finland. Mm-hmm. And that's the most beautiful country if any of people want to go travelling. And it's a country of 60,000 lakes.
Wow.
And swimming in the lakes in beautiful, clear water. Very, very special. So, and I've always tried to swim wherever I've travelled to. I want to be able to say I have swum there.
Are there any fears, or have you ever had any sort of fears around swimming?
I think the one most recent, I suppose, but that goes back quite a few years, like at least 10, was when we were sailing in Croatia. Mm-hmm. And I sort of dived in and was very happy. And then I felt that I was miles away, which of course I wasn't, but I had this fear that there might be something rather big underneath me and appear and grab my feet. And that's not a good thought to have when you are swimming.
No.
And I got back to the boat as fast as I could, telling myself that how ridiculous. But that was very odd. I'd never had that sort of fear before.
Yes. Have you got any sort of techniques for dealing with those kind of moments of panic? Or
I think I just tell myself not to be so ridiculous and get on with it. And I don't think I've ever had any result of putting me off doing anything, put it that way. No, I just think, well, that was a bit silly, wasn't it? But I suppose I was the youngest of 4 and the others were 3 brothers. So I was always keeping up, doing whatever they could do, I could do. Yes. So I've been fairly fearless all my life.
Yeah.
And so no, water-wise, obviously in sailing you have lots of adventures and things go wrong, and so you have to cope with them when they go wrong. And so here we are. I can't sail anymore, but I can climb on our boat and sit and have coffee, but I can't actually sail. No. So that's a bit of a sadness, but I can swim.
But you can swim, yes. And I was going to say, and sort of really just finishing off, do you envisage that you will continue swimming now?
Very much so. Yeah, I think this is really, with all the pandemic of people not doing very much, which of course couldn't happen for us, I feel I've got a new lease of life, put it that way, that I can swim. So I'm thrilled, absolutely thrilled over that. I can't do any more, can't play tennis, can't sail, but I can swim.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Marion. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Well, thank you very much.